So I was born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. I am one of six. My parents immigrated to this country years ago, like many other people, in the search of giving their children a better life. Mm-hmm. So they came to the United States, and I was born in McAllen, Texas, raised in Mission, attended La Jolla High School, and childhood was great. I mean, we were happy. We came from very humble beginnings, but as a family, we were very close. You know, having both my mom, my dad, my siblings, we were generally a very happy child growing up. You know, my parents came to this country with a third grade education, so it was hard. We migrated to different states as migrant workers and always came back, you know, to the Rio Grande Valley because this is our home. And even, you know, growing up later in life myself, I left the Valley, but I've always come back to the Valley because this is where my heart is, where my family is, and where I feel like I'm just in a happy place.
So where were your parents originally from? Like,
my parents are from Nuevo León, from General Terán, Nuevo León. Both my mom and my dad were born and raised there. And like I said, they traveled to this country. They love this country. Mm-hmm. And I lost my father 2 years ago, but before he passed away, they both became U.S. citizens. And that is one of the biggest things, that we are so blessed to be in this country. Mm-hmm. They love this country so much that they themselves became U.S. citizens, raised 6 of us, you know, and instilled within us the value of an education and the value of being a close-knit family.
So when they came to the Valley, because, you know, I have a similar story too. My grandparents came in from Mexico. My mom went up into Illinois and as a migrant worker too, and just kind of like working the fields and things like that. And so what places did y'all go to? Like, what was that experience like?
Okay. The majority of my mom's family, they moved to Florida. So we traveled to Florida, of course, picking oranges, and then North and South Carolina with the peaches. So in the summer, we would travel over there, work there, and then come back. And I did that all the way until high school. And that was at the time working in the fields is hard work. Yeah. So it's a lot of hard work, but that's when I decided that I needed to pursue an education. Like I said, my parents instilled in me that value of having an education. It's just, it was hard. It was hard to attain, but they always said, you can get it done. So my high school years, I was able to stay home, focus more on my college credits and getting my resume ready to apply for college. And I was the first one in my family to attend and acquire a post-secondary education.
Wow, that's awesome.
Just breaking that cycle. I mean, it can be done. It was just a hard road getting there.
Yeah, and I would imagine that, like, if you were doing that, not only is, you know, working in the fields very difficult, but if you were doing it in the summertime, it must have been extremely hot too, right? So just...
Oh yes, peaches. You know, when people see peaches now, and I had this conversation, when you see the fuzz, you don't think about it, but when you're out there in the heat, picking peaches, and you have it all over your body, that fuzz can really be painful. So
is it really? Like, it starts to rub on your...
Yes, if you get it all over you, I mean, peaches are different. You know, you see them in the store, but that fuzz, you know, in hot weather, all day long.
So when you go to H-E-B, do you buy peaches?
I do, but it's different. I know I had that conversation with my neighbor, and she's like, I never thought about that. I was like, yes, you know, not until you've been out there. That's why, you know, when you see people that are migrant workers, it's just so much hard work that they do, and you get paid nothing for it. Mm-hmm. You know, all the effort that you put in, you get paid very little. So, you know, it's something that I admire people that do that. We did that, but I was blessed. I was very blessed. And I think I tell people I was blessed to get educated. Yeah. It's the biggest thing. You know, I had that opportunity that came my way. I took it, and a lot of people helped me get there.
Yeah. And you know, I think from your parents' perspective too, sometimes I think about this is like to move from one country to another country, not knowing, right? Like there was no internet back then. There was no job search. Trying to find a job before you get to a particular place. It's just a lot of faith and, you know, a lot of the willingness to do it. And so, yeah, I mean, what was your life like?
Well, I'm the oldest of 4. I have a younger brother, 2 younger sisters. We're all 2 years apart, which I think was a good thing. My dad was a high school teacher, taught at Mac High for 34 years.
What did he teach?
Math.
Oh, okay.
So I always felt like I was obligated to excel in math, just by virtue of him being a teacher. I tried not to ever seek his help, but because he was a math teacher, I just felt like I should naturally just be good at math.
And were you?
Yes, actually I was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, growing up, I did those UIL competitions and number sense and whatever. I never won anything. I don't even know I even came close, to be honest with you, but at least I made the team.
Nice.
Every year growing up. My mom is, my dad, he's from here, from FAR. He grew up here, graduated from PSA High School, graduated from Pan American, and went on to become a teacher. My mom is from Monterrey. Mm-hmm. She came here to the U.S. when she was about 17 or 18 years old. I was born, I believe she was 21, 22 years old.
Okay, so fairly young.
Yes. I grew up in the city of FAR, had from all accounts, a good childhood. It's funny because now you evolve into, just year after year, things happen, and, you try to put yourself in a better place. And you now that we have two children, kind of comparing their childhood to ours, we just didn't know any better. That what we had was everything. Yeah. And it was plenty. It was, just enough to make us happy every day, and just not realizing, that we did have limited resources, and, some of the things that we did, we never went on vacations or anything like that, but like we were just perfectly happy with what we had, and never knew that there was so much more out there that we were missing out on. Not necessarily missing out on, but there was other things to do. We just, the way we were raised, we were just happy kids and good environment. So, everything was just peachy.
Yeah.
Sorry, babe.
Yeah. That's a good dad joke. So I mean, yeah, that sounds like kind of the everything's good. I think also, that kind of speaks to your parents' character too, about like just making sure that you all had a happy childhood growing up, and that you didn't really feel like there was a need for more, right?
Never.
So I think that that's great that you were able to kind of, I don't know, do you think that the math part was a genetic thing, or was it just that your dad was? Well,
to be clear, my dad, he raised me since I was a little less than a year old. He's my stepdad.
Okay.
Which is actually kind of, it's funny because he wasn't my biological father, but nonetheless, just because he was a math teacher, I just felt like I needed to excel at math, and I would push myself to just kind of to make him proud, come home with A's. I had always had decent grades, but I always made a point to make sure that I had A's in math, just to make him proud and say, "Hey, Dad, I know this is your area, and you can be proud of." Yeah, here you go, straight A. Exactly. Look at this
99 that I got on this.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it wasn't, hereditary, but it was just one of those things that I just felt I needed to step up to the plate. I needed to make him proud, and I did. Well, I would like to think that I made him proud, but certainly I at least brought home those A's in math, so that was good.
Yeah. So do you all think that, both of y'all are judges, do you feel like growing up and kind of seeing where those humble beginnings, and maybe you don't really realize it at the time, but maybe later on, do you feel like that sense of making your parents proud, did that kind of have something to do with y'all's the ambition to continue to push more? Because you go from being the first to graduate, right? And but then you don't stop there, right? You keep going, and you keep going, and you all, go one level, and then you all level up again. So how does that, what were some of those values, I guess, that your parents instilled in you, and how important was their kind of appreciation for the things that you all did? Like, how did that play a factor?
Well, I think that validated their sacrifices. For me, like I said, my parents came to this country, they left everything, and they left everything they had. They had a good home, they had a family. I cannot imagine myself leaving my family now and traveling or moving to a completely different country where I don't speak the language, where I don't know anybody. So I think when I worked hard, is just to validate that their sacrifices were done, for a good cause. Coming here, mentioning leaving to law school, already having one degree. My first degree was as an educator. I was a teacher. I was, a grown woman with a career, and here I am one day deciding I want to pursue my dream of law school. And I moved across the country. So I left the Valley. I went to Michigan. I attended Michigan State College of Law.
Wow.
And talking about fear. So where I'm leaving educated with a family, you know, knowing where I'm going, I'm scared. And at that point is when I realized, hey, my dad came to this country and his first job was in Chicago. Didn't know the language, didn't know a single person. You know, I have no, I guess, excuse for not succeeding. So when I left, and I think we both talked about we've talked about a lot of the similar backgrounds and experiences. When we left to law school, I was not going to come back without a law degree. You know, leaving the Valley, having culture shock, you know, you leave the Valley, it's hot, to Michigan with its cold weather. I was the only Latina in that classroom. You know, when I walked in and I looked around and I was like, am I the only Latina here? You know, and you don't feel that here in the Valley.
Right.
You know, and the professor goes, where's Texas? And I'm there thinking, oh gosh, I hope I'm not Texas, you know, because I am from Texas. And sure enough, he wanted to know where the person from Texas was, you know. So I think just leaving, knowing I'm not coming back as a failure, I'm not coming back with that law degree, you know, to prove to my parents and to validate that whatever sacrifices they had were worth it. So that's how I feel of, you know, validating their sacrifices.
Yeah, no, and a lot of similarities between her experience and mine. You know, the same thing that drove me to get A's in math. You know, I just wanted to make them proud of me. You know, without them having to feel like they had to go above and beyond. Like I didn't want to have any extra help or any extra resources to try to get the job done. So I just took it upon myself to try to do well in that area. When I graduated from high school at the age of 18, I moved to Houston, which was culture shock. Yeah. It's a lot different. You know, and 18 years old, I'd never been away from home.
Well, I mean, you said that you never really did vacations and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you never really traveled.
Never really traveled a whole lot. But you know, I attended the University of Houston. I got there, and you know, I'll be perfectly honest. There was many times when I just gave up. I said, you know what, I can't take this anymore. You know, just broke all the time, just trying to pay your bills. And there was a point in time, and I tell this story, and I'm very proud of it. But I used to ride the bus 2 hours to get to school. And I'd be there all day from basically 8 to 5:30 actually, because my last class ended at 5:30. And I'd get back on the bus on Metro, and it'd take me another 2 hours to get home. And I did that for about a year and a half. And it was exhausting. I mean, literally, I was at 20 hours a week on a bus. I mean, that's just horrible.
Wow. It's a part-time job right there.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but every time that I felt like, you know what, I'm giving up, I can't do this anymore, I'll go home. I'm a junior in college, I can finish off, you know, back home or whatever. But then I'd speak to my mom or I'd speak to my dad, and they would just remind me, you know, they'd tell me how proud they were of what I was doing. And I was like, oh God, you know, I can't, you know, disappoint them and go back home and say, look, I tried, I couldn't get it done. So that would just drove me every day. You know, every time I'd give up, there was a phone call that came, you know, soon after, you know, where I wouldn't share these stories with my parents. You know, they didn't know everything that was going on in my mind. But I would find motivation just from them, you know, their sense of pride and just reminding me of how proud they were of what I was doing, and, you know, keep doing it. You can do this, you know, that kind of, you know, those kind of little pep talks, like very subtle.
Give you that motivation to keep going.
Yes, and then I'd have to just suck it up and say, you know what, I can't go back home until I get this done. And that was the driving factor, not only in undergrad, but in law school. And law school was tough too. I mean, it's just very demanding. It consumes all your time, all your energy. But by that point, I'd pretty much made up my mind that I wasn't coming back home, like she said, without those degrees, and you know, just had to make it happen.
Yeah, because I think that takes a lot of fortitude to be able to just continue to push on, and especially in those kinds of situations when you're just kind of, you're out of gas and you're tired and you're, you know, and I think from an outsider's perspective too, you know, you all are very successful, and there's different types of ways of kind of identifying success, right? But I think when people see how successful people are, they don't really understand kind of the voyage or the journey on how they got there, right? And so there must have been somewhere along the line like some rough patches, right? Some challenges and stuff. I mean, Michigan and just being the only Latina there, that must have been a crazy culture shock, especially coming from the Valley where Hispanics are the large majority, right? I mean, and so that must have been a huge culture shock. And then you were there for how long?
3 years.
Okay, so you were in it for 3 years, and then you were at U of H, and then you went into law school
at TSU Thurgood Marshall in Houston, which is right down the street. So at least I didn't have to move. But so I lived in Houston for about 8 years, including the bar exam. Yeah, about 8 years, give or take. I too didn't realize I was Mexican American or Hispanic or Latino, whatever. I didn't.
You leave the valley.
Yeah, you're like, wait a second. Where's everybody else around here?
Yeah, so at the age of 18, I realized we're not all Hispanic, we're not all Latinos, we're not all, Tex-Mex. There's, so it was an eye-opener. But you know what? All in all, it was a great experience. I wouldn't, change anything for the world. The way things have just turned out, there was lessons learned all along the way, good and bad. There was some good times, there was some, down times, but, that's just part
life.
of it. That's life.
It brought us here.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're in Houston for 8 years. You're in Michigan for 3 years. Both of you all graduate, I would assume, around the same time.
I'm like 10 years younger than she is.
I was going to say.
He looks younger than me, doesn't he?
He sure does.
No, there's a
difference. There's an age difference.
I'm 7 years older.
Okay, that's not too bad.
No.
That's not too bad.
So I started practicing, but she was a teacher for a little while before she went to law school.
Right.
So
right.
I started practicing in December of 98. Well, basically, that's when I was licensed. So I basically started practicing law in the beginning of 1999.
And so you went undergrad straight into law school.
Yes, I was desperate. I was broke. I just needed to cross that finish line, so I wasn't taking any time off.
So keep going.
Keep going.
And then you were a teacher for a while before you were like, there's still a better.
I took a detour. I always knew that I wanted to go to law school. I mean, that has always been my dream, to be in law school. I just had, I guess, a difficult time getting there, and one of the things it was that sometimes we don't believe in ourselves. We want this, but we're so afraid of failure. So when I started college, that's what I wanted to do. And, I was told, why? Why we don't have a law school here, just become a teacher. And I love teaching. I still think that one day, I want to go back. Teaching is, I guess, children are a passion. I love being around children and helping children. So yes, I kind of took a detour and went to teaching, and then after several years seeing some of the things that I didn't like as a teacher, I said no, my dream was law school. So then I just took a summer off, started studying again, took the LSAT, and I got accepted, and I left.
Wow.
And I left. I packed up everything. I got the letter. I remember telling my parents and my brothers, and they're like, really, again? And I'm like, I'm leaving. So that was my passion, going to law school. So I'm so blessed that I got to accomplish that.
So you were a teacher for a year?
For about 3 to 4 years.
Oh, wow.
I was teaching first grade.
Wow.
In La Jolla. I was a teacher in La Jolla. That's where I graduated from. And then PSJ.
PSJ.
And then PSJ. I was a teacher in PSJ as well.
Oh, really? So. Oh, okay. That's cool. So, so you graduate from Michigan State.
Yes.
Right? So what kind of just brought you back down? You graduated. Did you just come back to family and say, like, I'm gonna plant my roots here? And
yes, I graduated from law school, and that's when my parents got very ill. Both of my parents got very ill. They were transferred to San Antonio. So I moved to San Antonio to take the bar while I was taking care of them there. And after that, I stayed there. I was helping the women's shelter in San Antonio. And my parents just, needed me back home. And after a while, I decided, the best thing is to just come home. I would come back every weekend, work in San Antonio, come back, and I was happy here, until my friends and my family said, why don't you just move back? And I did. I came back to the Valley, and I loved it since the first day, and I'm here. And
when you came back, did you come back, like, did somebody had somebody already offered you a job, or did you move back and then you were like, I'm going to find something?
No.
Just like your parents were like, I'm moving over here and I'm going to find
fish out
something.
of water.
I packed all my stuff in one car, like I did when I left law school, moved to San Antonio. Whatever fit in that car was what I took. And then from San Antonio, whatever fit in that car, I brought back home. I didn't know a single person.
In the legal profession.
In the legal profession. I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. Thanks. I didn't know a single person in the legal profession. You're correct. I didn't know an attorney. Or I didn't know a judge. So I had to come back home. And one day I just walked into the Hidalgo County Courthouse. And I had met someone from Legal Aid, Pablo Almaguer, and he said, hey, do you want to take a case? And I said, I don't have an office. I don't know anybody. But I took one of my first cases. I was at the law library. And that's how I got, and started the legal profession. I took a case. And I was able to help, a lady in the military that was going to get deployed. So that was my very first case, and little by little I started meeting different people, working very hard, and I was in private practice for a long time. I worked through legal aid on a pro bono basis. I've always believed in helping others. A lot of people helped my father. A lot of people helped me get here. So even though I was in private practice, I always gave time to legal aid to help women and men victims of domestic violence.
Wow. There are men who are victims of domestic violence.
Yes, women and men. I helped a lot through pro bono through the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. They have a private involvement program where I would take cases for free besides my regular work, and I would help them keep their houses, keep their children, just break that cycle. We're all trying to break a cycle that might not be good for us. For me, it was breaking the cycle of, being a migrant worker and getting educated. So I was trying to help women and men breaking that violence cycle.
Right, yeah, because once you feel like you're immersed in it, it's hard to get out.
It is very difficult. And I did some work in San Antonio with a shelter. And, coming back home, I looked for similar opportunities to be able to help my community. So I helped legal aid. And after that, I worked for the Public Defender's Office too, also helping people who cannot afford to hire an attorney to represent them.
Wow, that's awesome. And so, turning to Luis, you 8 years in Houston. What brought you back?
I think I knew all along that I wanted to come back to the Valley. I mean, obviously, these are my roots. I felt, I knew a lot of people down here, not in the legal profession, but just, I had a lot of friends, family, and et cetera. So I just felt, after being away for so long, I just missed the Valley so much that I just knew, and I think I was right, that it would be better for me, for my career, just to come back home and work in an environment where, you're more familiar with your surroundings. Getting to know people actually was a lot easier. It literally took me, in undergrad when I was in Houston, I'd probably go weeks without actually talking to anybody, because I just didn't know any other. I used to work on campus, so I would talk to my, coworkers and, people in that department that I knew. But as soon as I'd leave that office and I'd walk to class and I'd, go have lunch, whatever, I walked around the campus of 40-some thousand students, and I didn't know very many people. And it was rare to see, bump into somebody every now and then. So I think I'd had enough of that. I love Houston, by the way. I love to go back now that I can afford to, go out to restaurants.
You're a big U of H fan, right?
Big time, yeah. I still try to go basketball games, football games. So I love the city of Houston. It just grew on me big time. But at that point in my life, I was ready to come back home. Again, I just thought it would be a better environment, better situation for me. And I think it was the right choice to make. I had planned to do that all along, to be honest with you. I came back and kind of hit the ground running. Yeah, I moved into, I have an uncle who was a lawyer. Growing up, I had no idea what a lawyer did, but I knew he wore nice suits and drove nice cars and lived in a nice home. So I said, well, he always
sounds like a pretty good.
Yeah, he always seemed to be happy too. Yeah, I was like, well, I don't know what you do, but maybe one day I can grow up to do that. So he opened his doors for me and allowed me to move into his office. He gave me a little office space there, and he was already been in the profession 20 plus years probably at that point. And so he just kind of, hey, help me out with this, help me out with that. It's kind of teaching me the ropes. And just, it just kind of steamrolled from there. So, for me, it wasn't all that difficult to get going because he introduced me to, everybody down at the courthouse and all his friends, et cetera. So it was, it was a positive experience from the beginning. It wasn't, I imagine in any profession, there's a learning curve, which I had to go through as well. But at least it was it wasn't a hostile environment. It was a friendly environment, and it was nice to be able to meet a lot of people through him. So I really appreciate that.
Right. And I think, like as a professional, you're looking for a network, right? You're part of the learning curve is just understanding the profession, gaining the experience, but then also there's a lot to say about the professional network that you start to build throughout the years.
Absolutely.
So, you started the practice, you started with your first case. Somewhere along the line of you all practicing law, you meet. Tell me about I want to hear your side of the story.
I was going to say it's an interesting. It depends who you ask. So
I'll
give you my version. So we met at the most romantic place in the valley, at the courthouse.
No, not just the courthouse.
The juvenile courthouse.
We're representing juvenile delinquent.
Well, it was my first time. I went there to observe cases, and the judge was very gracious to give me my first case.
And this was what year?
This was back in 2009.
9? It was 2008.
2008.
2008. Okay.
Oh, yeah, he's better with dates than me. It was 2008, so it was the first time I was just there to observe with a friend who took me over there, and they gave me a case. Juvenile was going to jail. I've never done a case. I was stressing out. I had no idea what I was doing, what I was going to argue, and I'm there trying to read a file, trying to get ready, and I know that he came by, and he was like, hey, by the way, my name is Lopez-Singleterry, and, he was so happy-go-lucky, and I think he said, hey, just go out there and make your best argument, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to argue. It's my first time here, so we met there at the courthouse, at the juvenile courthouse.
And that was your pickup line, just like...
Say, I know you're lost. You don't know what you're doing, but just follow me, and I'll teach you the way.
But you're like, you're gonna do great. So even from the get-go, like encouragement,
and that was being sincere, because because I could tell she was a little stressed out about what was going on, and really and truly, I mean, you already know what to do. It's just that you haven't done it. You've been trained to do this. Your gut tells you where you want to go with this, what you want to say, what you want to do. You just don't have the confidence, just like anything else, just because you haven't done it, a number of times. But after a while, it becomes a little routine or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the message I was trying to convey to her at the time. Just go with it. It's going to be fine. No one's going to go to life for prison. Nobody's going to get executed here. You're going to be fine. Just do what comes naturally, whatever comes to mind. I mean, you're smart. Obviously, you've been trained. Just do what you feel, and just say what you think you should say. So
you saw her kind of looking over her notes. You just decided to give her some words of encouragement, and then what happened?
Well, it was. I mean, I did see her looking over her nose, and she was a little like there were the headlights shining on her, and just kind of a little lost. And not to mention, I was like, oh, she's a good-looking lady there, young lady.
I was brand new. New to the courthouse. So, no, I did well. My client didn't go to prison. The judge gave him another opportunity. I think it was one of my most passionate arguments. Honestly, going back, and the judge was like, okay, it's enough. I'm like, no, but you've got to listen to it. And I kept on going and going, and I think the judge was going to give him a chance. I was so passionate about keeping him from jail. And then, the rest was just history. We would see each other at the courthouse. I was very busy. I was back home taking care of my parents, trying to build my own law office, and just working hard to take care of them. And we would just see each other at the courthouse a whole lot, and then we started trying cases.
So that was the introduction. It was just like,
just interacting at the courthouse.
But it wasn't like, I met you, what's your number? Let's go.
No, we just kind of it was that. No. I wasn't like that at all. I think we ran into each other several times, and obviously mutual friends, and hey, what do you think about Nereida, whatever. And I know we have a mutual friend, Laurita, who I thank every day.
His friends would try to keep everybody away from me, saying that, no, she has to date Lopez-Singleterry. And I'm like, who is Lopez-Singleterry? Oh, that guy, that you met. So I was working hard, but my friends, we had a lot of friends in common. We went to a lot of events in common, and we were always at the courthouse. Our friends were always trying to get me to date him.
Because they knew you all so well that they were like, your personality and his personality.
They loved him, and then of course they loved me too. We were both single, so they were like, it's perfect, but it just took a long time. It took a while.
Timing.
It took a while. I was focused on working a lot, learning, being, he had a lot of experience. So he was already set. He had his office. He was an experienced attorney. I was a brand new attorney building my career. So
trying to make a name for yourself. And
I was working very hard, and it left very few free time. So he was very patient, very, very patient.
Well, I didn't want to scare her off either, so I was,
of course.
He did.
I got to play my cards right.
And it helped. And it helped. The fact that he left me alone and just, let me do my thing. And, and then we started doing a lot of work together. He was a great criminal trial attorney. And I was very eager to learn. So we started trying a lot of cases together and just being around each other and working together a lot.
So it was kind of one of those natural things where it was like, we're spending a lot of time together, we're cool together, we should, and then so just, did he ask you out on a date? And like, when did it become official?
Well, that's
like,
also, it depends who you ask. I asked him out.
Oh, you asked him
That's
out.
my version of the story. I asked him out. Yes.
You did. I was
I
playing
did.
hard to get. I already knew.
That's the way you got to do it. That's the way you got to do it, bro.
No, I knew he was interested and he was around a lot. I just wasn't ready at the time. And then I guess when I was ready, I was like, okay, come on now. I know you like me. You want to go out with me. Like, we're not getting any younger here. So I say that I asked him out.
Or what did you ask him out? What'd you do or what?
It was at a Young Lawyers. I was very involved with the Young Lawyers. And
The Hidalgo County Young Lawyers Association.
Hidalgo County Young Lawyers Association. I was in the board for several years. I mean, that's how I got started. And we had a meeting, and I think afterwards we talked. And I just said, I'm here to work really hard. I'm here to take care of my parents. That's my priority. And if you want to come along for the ride, but understanding that I'm going to work very hard. And, you know, he did. I guess we're in the same profession. We understand the demands of this work. So he was very good about, you know, respecting my work and my time with my parents.
Yeah, very supportive of each other's career because, you know, it can be very time consuming. I would imagine both of you all were, what types of law do you practice? Because, and I'm not too keen on, you know, the all of the different facets of what attorneys do, but there's personal injury attorneys, there's criminal, right? There's commercial litigation. There's a lot of these different facets of the law. Were you all just sort of doing a lot of different things at first, or were you specifically concentrated in one part of it?
I mean, I started initially trying to do a little bit of everything, you know, just trying to find your niche, see
Right.
what you like. The office that I worked in, they did a lot of criminal defense work. I started doing a lot of federal criminal defense work, which was very challenging, but at the same time, you know, you want to take on that challenge. It was very provoking, very intriguing. You know, you kind of want to take on these big cases, you know, and so I initially started doing a little bit of everything, but then I started kind of gearing towards more towards the criminal defense. I did obviously a lot of state work, but I did do a lot of criminal defense work in the federal system, which I found very exciting and very rewarding because I would, you know, in addition to what you learn in the courtroom, just by trying cases, experiencing different things, it also gave me the opportunity to travel the country. I represented a lot of clients outside of the Valley. So I traveled, you know, to Florida, Alabama, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, you know, and so it was fun to be able to go to places, you know, and, you know, you show up kind of, you know, places I've never been before and
Right.
never thought I'd, and, you know, ever be there, especially work related. And you show up to these big old historic, you know, big old
Beautiful courthouses,
yeah.
right?
And so it just kind of gave you a sense of pride, like, you know,
I'm making it.
I'm doing something. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. And, again, very rewarding when you're able to help people out, because as a criminal defense attorney, obviously we represent people who are guilty of having committed crimes. And oftentimes the majority of the people that you represent, you know, are in fact guilty of having committed these offenses that they've been charged with. But there are people who have been falsely accused, or, you know, maybe we're at the wrong place at the wrong time. And when you're able to help these people out and you know, the outcome is positive and, you know, aside from the financial, you know, aspect of it, it's very rewarding to be able to walk away from, you know, when you close down a case and you feel like you did something that was right, you did something that was good, and that's just something that they can't, you know, you can't put a price tag on that. You can't, you know, just the feeling. You kind of look back to all the struggles that you went through, all the sacrifices, everything, you know, sitting in class, taking exams, doing all this stuff, riding the bus for 2 hours, and then you feel like, you know what, it was all worth it because that person gets to go home to his or her family because they got themselves wrapped up in a situation where they shouldn't have been in the first place. And again, the practice of law can be financially rewarding, but it's rewarding far beyond, you know, any financial rewards. I mean, just the feeling of knowing that you did the right thing and you were able to help somebody out. I mean, you just can't, you know, put a price on that. It's great.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, regardless of the profession, you know, there's some people that make, from a monetary standpoint, and I've talked about this before too, is like, a lot of people attribute success, like what does it mean to be successful? And when people think about that, they say the first thing that they associate success with is money.
Right.
But that's not always the case, because as you continue to progress, I feel like there's a certain sense of fulfillment that money cannot. Money cannot substitute that, right? There's a certain sense of fulfillment that beyond what you do, like you give of your time. There's that sense of fulfillment when you're able to have somebody have a better life because you were able to step in and do something about it. That is way more fulfilling than any sort of monetary gain that you may
absolutely
have.
Absolutely.
And so that's probably the most rewarding part of your career, right? Or like
each and every day, yes.
Yeah.
Even now, I mean, there's people that come before you, and just this morning, we've had a family case where it's just complicated. Things aren't easy, but you try to do the right thing and hope that people walk away from the situation feeling like they you were fair, you treated them right, you treated them with respect, and the outcome was good. And if you do get it right, which we don't always get it right, but you try to get it right, as often as you can, and as much as you can. And if you get it right, I mean, it's rewarding in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, I think that really definitely, like, the background speaks to the character and the way that you all are, now that you all are both judges, and we haven't really gotten to that point in terms of campaigning, right, through your journey so far. But I think background has a lot to do with when you're taking a look at those juvenile cases, those things that you've tried, right? All of the things that you've seen and everything that you've experienced helps you to become a better judge because of those experiences. And so I think that's pretty neat.
And I think Nereida's, the avenue that she took, I think it was just as or even more rewarding because you did a lot of family law.
Yeah, yes,
is that where you?
We're all legal in the legal profession, and like I said, coming back home, it was great because we have represented people from all walks of life. Being back home to a valley that is not as big as Houston, you're able to have a diverse clientele, and they come with you with different problems. Perhaps at one time you represented them on a family case, but then they've gotten to know you, they've gotten to trust you, and later on when somebody else has a different type of problem, they want you to help them. And I've been in that situation. Yes, family law, I think, follows me. In Michigan, I worked a lot with child support, with families. I moved to San Antonio, and I get, to help with the shelter, the battered women's shelter, and then I moved back to the valley, and, family law has followed me, and I've realized, children, family law, that's my passion. That's my calling. But I've also been able to practice in criminal law, like I said, litigating cases with him and by myself, doing personal injury. Our career gives us that opportunity to impact people's lives. As an attorney representing them from keeping them from losing their house, their children, those are their liberty, their most prized possession. Like we tell all our clients, is your liberty, your children, your family. And now as judges, we are very blessed to be in that position as well, that we bring this experience. And for most people, I tell them, this is my third career. I was a teacher, I was an attorney, and now as a judge, and sitting here now, going back and thinking, wow, how did I get here? All these experiences, going through different situations, different careers have molded us to be more sympathetic, to be more empathetic. When we have somebody that comes before our courtroom, we're able to relate. And as judges, we apply the law. Our job is to apply the law fairly. But experiences will come into play of whether I give somebody else an opportunity, a second chance. You have an individual who perhaps made some wrong choices, but you see there's a future for them, You perhaps give them a second chance, and that's where our experiences come into play.
Yeah. So, so now you all are attorneys. You're practicing. Your passion is family. You're really finding a really great niche in criminal. You all are now, I guess, dating, right? How long were you all dating before you popped the question? And if you don't mind me asking, like, what was that proposal like? It's not too personal.
It was like 4 to 5 years.
He's better with numbers.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
I think about 5 years.
Yeah, we dated for about almost 5 years.
Okay.
It was her birthday. I planned a trip to San Francisco.
Nice.
Which is really nice. My first time in San Francisco. Was it your first time in San Francisco?
I think it was our second time. No, I don't remember. You see, I'm not great at those
No,
things.
well, it was my first time. I think it was your first time. First and only time.
We've only been to San Francisco together, so
Yeah,
it's
okay,
either
so-
both our first or their second time. But we were in it was our, it was our first time in San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, we won't be. I think we've been there 3 times. So it's not like we go like
Just
every
don't
summer.
remember.
All the time, right?
Yeah,
I
we
just
have
don't
a summer
remember. But
vacation.
yeah, we went out and we were having dinner and
Do you remember the restaurant? Like, do you remember what
we've
you were
gone
wearing?
we've gone back.
We've actually gone back, to the same restaurant. I think we sat at the same table.
It was underneath the bridge. He was.
Not the Golden Gate.
The Golden Gate.
It was the other.
Not,
Jesus.
not the Oakland Bridge or whatever. What is it?
I got a picture of it.
We were, and he wanted to go outside, and I love taking pictures. I love having pictures of everything. There's a story behind it, but I love taking pictures. He's like, "Let's go outside and take a picture," and I was like, "No, it's freezing." He's
Okay,
like,
so wait. So just kind of paint the picture for me here. You're 5 years. You go to San Francisco for it's like a weekend trip.
for my birthday.
It's her birthday.
For your
My
birthday.
birthday.
So it's birthday weekend trip. It's cold, obviously.
freezing.
Your
It's the
birthday
middle of
is-
July.
But it's freezing
And
for
it's,
me.
but it's cold. Yes.
60.
San Francisco,
Yes.
yeah. We had been out all day, so I was tired. He's like, "Let's go outside, take a picture," and I'm like, "No, it's freezing. It's freezing." And
Let's get a cab.
and he was very nervous, and I was like, "Why are you so nervous?"
She already knew.
I did not know. Actually, I did. And he
You
was
had no
drinking.
clue.
No, I had no clue. He was drinking. I was like, "Why is he insisting?" I'm like, "Fine, fine. Let's go outside and take a picture." And that's where he proposed. Got on a knee.
I found some gentleman that was there. Well, I got a searcher. Can you come here? Because I need for you to take a picture of this. He's like, "Why? Just please help me."
There was hardly anybody out there.
So this is a random dude.
It's
Yeah,
a
just a
random
random
person that he
person.
flagged down there, and he was there, and then he got on his knee and he proposed. So
Wow.
I did not know. I was surprised actually.
And she was so cold. She's like, "Yes, let's go.
Yes,
Let's go
get
back
out.
to the
Let's go.
hotel.
It's
Get out of here."
cold. So I didn't understand why he was so nervous. I guess for men it's harder, but it's like you knew I was going to say yes.
It was gonna be a one-time deal. You want to get it right. You want to do everything just right. You want
Right.
the moment to be perfect
Well, I think for a guy too, it's right. Like getting the ring right
at the right
also,
time. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Like, do you like the square? Do you like the round? I don't know what they're called, right? Princess cut and like round cut and
yes.
teardrop or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is.
I
cheated though. I had a practice ring. I
Oh,
had a
did
ring
you?
that I regularly replaced. Yes, because I knew I could not get the right ring without her input. So.
good for you,
yes.
sir. You know her well.
Yes, it was temporary. It was
Ah.
it was an engagement ring, but for that purpose only.
For,
just
for the
propose.
symbolism,
Yeah,
for the symbolism
yeah.
only, and then you pick whatever
And then-
you
and
want.
then we went out and
We'll
yes.
go out and get what you.
And we did do that.
Well,
Yeah.
you're a good
A few
man.
months later.
So yeah, that was the proposal in July, and then we went off and got married the following year in Puerto Rico.
Wow, very
Great,
nice. So
yeah.
you all had you all went out
Destination
and
wedding.
Destination wedding. That's fantastic.
Well, it's kind of strange because we live in the valley, right? You have to invite everybody. And if you forget one person, like you'll never hear the end of it.
Oh yeah, no.
So we invited everyone.
So everybody was invited.
Puerto Rico.
We invited the whole world.
And then how many people showed up?
I had a couple hundred people show up.
Yeah, we had a lot of people. Actually, we didn't expect a lot of people to show up. It was great, but a lot of people did show up to our wedding.
That's
thank
so
God.
cool.
Yeah, thank God.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And so outdoor wedding.
It was an outdoor
Yes.
wedding in the rainforest.
We brought our families. We paid for our immediate family. We paid for all their flights, their hotels, and everything, so that we didn't want to burden them with having to bear those expenses. So we kind of did some math, and we
Very
figured,
good.
all the money that we're going to spend on a wedding here, on doing this, the salon and the meal, and so once we
10,000
calculated everything,
people.
exactly, it was like it's going to be the same. If you calculate and factor in all those expenses, it says we're going to have a great time. It's going to be beautiful. Our families are going to get to go over there.
Mm-hmm.
Little mini vacation. It's going to be memorable, and everybody that we want to be there, all our close friends, people that we care about, people that we love, they all showed up, and by all accounts, I think everybody pretty much had a good time.
I would imagine that they did. Puerto Rico. I mean, that's
I almost
pretty
didn't
awesome.
make the wedding though.
Why?
I accidentally not accidentally, I kind of fell off the boat.
What?
It's a long story.
Well, we have time.
I was walking along. We rented a sailboat that our friends and I.
It was a big catamaran, and the waves were, and he just.
Yeah.
He claims it was an accident. I don't know. I think maybe he didn't want to get married, but I was still going to get married.
I was walking along the sailboat, and it was kind of like a little rough ride. We had just taken off in the morning. It was like 11 of us right on that boat. It was 10 couples and then one of our friends that was there by himself. Well, with the other 10 of us. And so I was walking along, one of the sides of the sailboats, and it was just bumpy. It was rough as we were leaving. And it was, about knee high, the rail. And I just
fell over?
But I happened to grab onto a cable that went up to the sail straight up in the middle of the boat. I mean, if I'd have been a foot further up ahead or a foot behind from where the spot, where I flew over, I would have landed in the water. I don't know what would have happened.
No.
But I held onto a cable. I was dangling on the side of the sailboat for a few minutes until somebody eventually walked by and heard me screaming for help. They leaned over and saw me, and they stopped the boat and got me in. And then I was scolded because she thought I did it on purpose.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I have great.
That's a good story.
It's great stories. We still got married.
We got married a couple days after that.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. So, y'all are married. You're going through. Both have very, very good careers, generating a lot of momentum, and then, Luis, you decide to. Well, before I get into that, at some point you decide to run for judge. Right. So from the time that you got married to the time you run for judge, what's kind of that experience? Because now you're tearing up, right?
Yeah, it was right after we got married.
3 months after.
3 months after we got married.
Really?
A lot of things happened in 2013, 2014.
Yeah. Well, that's when I met y'all.
Yeah.
I met y'all on that 2013, 2014.
Yeah. So I
y'all
had
were recently married.
We were just married 3
Oh,
months.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 2004. I was offered a position as a municipal judge, a part-time municipal judge with the city of FAR. And so I was able to do that part-time and still practice law full-time. So I had been a judge in the city of FAR for 10 years. Well, at that point, maybe about 9 years. When the 92nd District Court, Ricardo Rodriguez used to be the judge there. He decided to run for a district attorney. So he vacated that position. So that position was added on to the upcoming election. It was a special election because the term wasn't up for another 2 years. But so that position became vacant, and then conversations kind of started taking place. And then some folks kind of asked me, "Hey, well, why don't you consider doing this?" And I never ever. I just wanted to graduate from law school and get to work so I could make some money and actually just live a normal life.
A 2-hour bus drive.
Exactly. I just wanted to drive my own car. That's that's all I wanted in life, was just to live a normal life. Mm-hmm. I never thought ever that I was one day gonna be a judge. It's not something that I ever thought about really when I was in law school or anything. But everything's about timing, and I think the timing was right. The fact that I'd already been a municipal judge for 10 years, I think that helped a lot. I'd been practicing for, at that point, give or take about 15 years. And it just seemed like, the right time to do it. I had a conversation with my wife. I said, well, what do you think? And, we went back and forth. And one day just said, you know what? Let's do it. No guts, no glory. So decided to take on that.
Yeah, and you went on that campaign trail, and I remember that campaign trail, man. You all really just grinded. I mean, I remember seeing those, like, you all would do the block walks. And
God.
Y'all campaigned it right. Like, you did it the right way, and the way that you're supposed to do it. And so...
We had the right team?
Yes.
You were part of our team?
Yes. Very small part, which I'm very grateful for, by the way, but no, I think that you all did it definitely you did it the right way for sure.
If there's one thing that you learn, and I know many people can relate to this in many different aspects of life, many different professions, but anything that's worth doing and anything that's worth acquiring, it's going to take some time, some sacrifice, some energy.
Work.
Yeah, you have to work for it. Nobody's going to hand anything to you. And having lived through the experience of, and I'm speaking for myself, and I know she had very similar experience, but what I went through in undergrad, what I went through in law school, campaigning was like, I've kind of already done this before. Like it was a sacrifice, but it wasn't like, my first time having to run a marathon. I don't run very marathons, but
But figuratively
speaking, yeah, it's like I've done
There's
this before.
the light
You know,
at the end of
there's
the tunnel. We work hard, you know.
yeah, you already know the formula.
Right.
You put in the time, you put in the work, and the end result is going to be good.
Right.
And so you kind of already done this once, you've done it twice, and you do that really with you do that with your marriage, you do that with your friends, you do that with your family. It's the same formula.
You go through the grind.
You go through the grind. I mean, there's no
part of it.
shortcuts, and if you try to take shortcuts, it probably it may not work out in the end. But so we kind of figured, you know what, let's go ahead and do this, and thank God everything worked out just fine.
Man,
And here we are.
yeah. So
And she supported me 100%.
I remember.
And I'm very grateful for that. So
I told him I'm never going to complain a day.
years, fast forward a few years later, and then, again, timing, etc. And then now here we are. Kind of roles have kind of
have
flipped.
Well, now, I mean, she supported you right out of the gate. Well,
My number one
It
supporter.
kind of started with you supporting her through that juvenile case.
That's
that
right.
Juvenile court case. You can do it. I believe in you.
That's right.
You're gonna do fine. And now you
It's
guys
been time.
y'all got married. She did the same thing, right? You can do it. I believe in you. You're gonna do fine. And then Nereida decides to go that route as well, right? And so whether it is, whether it was, divine intervention or was just something that maybe you motivated, but at this point you go from, you become a judge, you're still practicing, and now you run for office.
Well, yeah, after that, I became a judge. So it was a position that became available. At one point, timing wasn't there. There was an opening in Master Court. Timing just wasn't there. People asked me, do you want to apply? I didn't. A year later, I was pregnant with my child, with my first daughter, Natalia. And I said, no, it's not the time. A year later, another position becomes available. The same thing, family law, one of the family courts, child support courts came about. And at that point, I said, I'm going to apply. This is my passion. And I was very grateful and blessed that I was appointed. I was appointed as an associate judge for Hidalgo, Jim Hogg, and Starr County. So that was 3 years ago.
Wow.
So I became an associate judge, and that's what I've been doing. I'm presiding over cases. And then after that time, there was another Judge Story Contreras, ran for the Chief Justice position. She was able to be successful, and she became our first Chief Latina, and her spot vacated.
In the Court of Appeals.
Now in the Court of Appeals. So that was about a year ago. And after, again, talking to my husband, we sat down and said, we have goals. This is something that I've been wanting to do. I've been a trial attorney. I'm already a judge. I think this experience will help me, be able to be great at this job that's vacancy. So I decided, and I announced about a year ago, that I would be running for the 13th Court of Appeals, Place 6. It's a different spot right now from where I'm at. So it's a higher court, obviously, and we decided to add, when Luis ran, it was one county, Hidalgo. This vacancy is 20
Which
counties.
was crazy.
So I've added 19 more counties to this campaign. So now this position, 13 Court of Appeals, Place 6, covers 20 counties.
That is...
all the coastal bend area and all the Rio Grande Valley.
So that is quite the campaign trail. And so what's that campaign trail been like? I mean, you're 19 counties in, right? 19? Or
20.
20 counties. 20 counties.
20.
That's 20 counties.
19 in addition to Hidalgo County.
Oh, in addition to. Okay. So 20 counties in total. What's that been like?
Honestly, it has been a lot of fun. Traveling to the other counties, we traveled obviously as attorneys, having work in different courthouses, but you find out that even though we're from different communities or different counties, we all have the same values. We all have the same goals. And, we all want the same thing. When someone comes before this courts, obviously every court is different. Our court right now, we see a lot of in-person people coming in before our courts. At the 13th Court of Appeals, it's cases that are being reviewed, okay? But they all want the same thing. They all want to be treated fairly. They all want to be treated equally and with respect. So just traveling the counties, it's been a year, we've traveled the majority of them. I've traveled the majority of them. I find that we all have the same goals and we want the same thing when we have a case that goes before the courts. Our decisions will impact every person, every business, every entity that comes before us. So we need to have someone that is cognizant, and is able to have use those powers with restraint. As being judges, it is a serious job, and we do have that power, like I said, to take away your job, your families, your houses, your liberties. And you want someone that's going to use that power with restraint. It's going to respect that court, and at the end of the day, give everyone, their day in court.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a huge responsibility, and it's a really big, really huge territory. Actually, my wife and I were just considering, going off on vacation, so we're going to road trip it because of all of this COVID stuff. So we're like, we can't go on any flights, and so just to get out of Texas is like 2 days just to get out of here. And so we started to rethink that idea. Because we were trying to go to the Grand Canyon. I was like, that's too far. But yeah, that's a huge territory. And, to be able to oversee that, and all of the lives that you're going to be impacting, yeah, it's definitely a really big responsibility. So, with all of the things that you've seen, because you've seen family, obviously given a lot of your time to those that have been abused from a criminal standpoint. You all see just cases and cases and cases. You all are I would imagine have done thousands over your career so far. What are some of those kind of lessons that you've pulled from it? Because I think when people watch the news, they get constantly bombarded with all of this negativity, and so they start to perceive the world in a certain way. But you all are presiding case over case over case over case over case. How do you try to instill some of the morals and the things that you've learned along the way, and try to kind of put that into court so that they can maybe lead a better life or have a second chance, or
Well, me personally, I think one of the things that you really need to look at is, and you come to terms with this, and you realize that every single case is different. You can't really treat any one person or any one entity or party based on the way you treated somebody else or what you saw in some other case, because every case has its own set of circumstances, its unique characteristics, facts, etc. Where when you close out one case, you turn the page and you start off with a blank page with the next case. And you have to just look at everything and everyone and every point of view, and you start over again. You can't generalize. You can't allow yourself to be jaded by the fact that you've seen this over and over again, because every time that you make a decision, it's going to impact a person, an individual, a family members. If it's an entity, it's gonna, that business, that corporation, that whatever it is. So you have to look at it through kind of the mindset has to be that you have to look at it, in its own individual right. You can't, again, just go back and refer to things that you've seen in the past. You have to keep an open mind. You have to treat everybody individually, just on its face differently, altogether. I think that when you start to look at things in a way such that, okay, this is repetitive, this is the same thing over and over again, I think maybe you've kind of lost focus of what you're supposed to do, because your job is to treat everybody individually, fairly, equally under the law. So, you see so many cases on a daily basis, and it's hard not to sometimes feel, jaded to a certain extent, because, a lot of these things are just recurring over and over. But you just have to keep an open mind. You have to, be mindful of the fact that you have to treat everybody differently, with their own set of circumstances, and treat everybody individually.
Yeah, because like you said, you're not only impacting the individual, right? That the case is about, but you're impacting everybody else associated with that case, whether it be family or the other side or what have you, right? So
yeah, and society as a whole as well, in some instances. So yeah, you have to be mindful of that.
What about for you, Nereida?
The same thing. It's just giving everybody their day in court. I mean, look at where we're at now with this pandemic, how one thing can affect so many people. So every case that comes before us, that decision that you make, it's going to affect people in different ways. So we have to be cognizant of that. We always have to step back and realize, if this was my case in court, how do I want to be treated? And I think that's the most important thing. When people come before me, I am firm, but I also treat them the same way that I want to be treated. And I think as long as you do that every day, you respect people, and at the end of the day, I tell them, I'm going to make a decision. Perhaps, both parties are not going to be happy, but it's the best decision for both. And I think when people walk away from your courtroom and they feel that you have respected them, they feel that you have listened to their case and made the best decision with the facts that you have before you, I think at the end of the day, everyone is happy.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. You want to treat people the way you would want to be treated. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that.
That's kind of the golden rule, right?
That's it. It really is very simple. The law evolves. We have to evolve with the law. When things change and the atmosphere changes, and I think that we have been able to, at least, I won't speak for you, but both of us have been able to adapt to the new times. Now with this virus that we have, things are different. We are hearing cases a different way, but we are able to always keep up with times of still making the wheels of justice spin and giving everybody their day in court. And we have been able to adapt, and you just have to do that every day.
Yeah.
And the day that you are no longer willing to do that, or the day I think that you feel that you're tired, then it's time to let somebody else. You got to pass on. You got to
pass that torch.
You got to pass the torch, and I think that's one of the important things, that we have to learn how to pass that torch and be ready for who comes before, after us, but also, where we're moving. And I think that's one of the main things why I'm running for office. I think that we represent, our generation, the generations that are there. So we always need to have someone that looks like the rest of our community, that has the same values, the same goals.
And I think also just, I think there's something to say about just the humble beginnings too, because, you're to have that experience and being able to scale up, you're not coming from this like kind of hierarchy of family. You're seeing it at a very real level. And to be able to have that experience, those life experiences, and then kind of take it through, and like you were talking about, both of y'all were talking about, like the hard work, the dedication, the pushing through, the making your parents proud as y'all are growing up and doing those things. Are those some of the things that sort of stay with you? Like, do y'all still have that kind of sense of making sure that your families are still staying proud of you, because now you have children, right? Now you're looking up to them. Now you have little ones that are looking up to you too, right?
And that's one of the stories that we have. My last name is Lopez-Singleterry, and when we got married, that was one of the things that, well, you're taking on my last name. And I said, no, I'm going to hyphenate my last name. And I think that our upbringing, our parents have a lot to do with, the way decisions that we make. And my last name, Lopez-Singleterry, is there for a reason, because, I want to honor my father, that he went through so many sacrifices. And even growing up, there was many times that we were gone, working. And I know one of the times, my dad told someone, like, my daughter is going to become a lawyer, and his employer laughed at him and he said, she's never going to become a lawyer. And I remember that vividly still, him telling my dad, and my dad, didn't speak English. He understood something. He looked at me like, what did he say? And I was just like, no, it's okay. He's like, no, what did he say? And it was that I would never become an attorney. So leaving law school, coming back, later on I shared with him the story, because he didn't know the whole story as to why I was so adamant about keeping my last name, because I wanted to put it in my law office and say, you know what, Dad, here, I became an attorney, and your last name, I carry it proudly. So I do have one of the longest last names, Lopez-Singleterry, and you'll see it out there, but there's a story, honoring my dad and keeping that, last name to show that, I value his sacrifices and that I will carry my last name. And, now he has a daughter. We have Natalia, and he's like, Natalia better carry the Singletary last name, so.
Yeah, for sure.
That's, one of the things of my last name, why I have, the hyphenated last name.
No, but go to your point is like, do you want to still make your parents proud, your family name proud? Of course. And now we have the added responsibility of, now we have children that, we want to make sure that 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, they can look back and say, hey, you know what? I'm proud of what my parents did. I'm proud of what they stood for. I'm proud of the way they carried themselves and the way they did things. And so not that it's added pressure, but certainly you want to set that example for them so that they can then follow in those footsteps, and God willing, they set those same examples for future generations. So definitely.
And so keeping those core principles. So one of the things that I had actually asked y'all to bring was like a prop, something that you all carry, something that you all have around your house to like, that has some significance. And so we've got 2 items here. There's a photo and then what looks like a coin. Is that a coin?
It's a little coin, a little token that a very good friend of mine gave me, and maybe I'll let you speak about, and then because it's very fine print.
So for those who may just be listening to the podcast and not actually seeing what we're doing, I guess describe the photo as best you can.
Yes, this is a picture of my dad, and it's when he was I asked my mother, he was about 20 years old, and him and his siblings, they were in Mexico. So this picture is about 60 years old.
Wow.
And he carried it with him. Like I said, my parents immigrated to this country, so they kept this picture all along, and he gave it to me. So I have this, and it's very valuable to me. But it just shows, there were 4 individuals in Mexico, and their sandals were made out of tires. They didn't have money. They grew up, if we grew up with humble beginnings, they were, a little bit worse than us, that, their sandals were made out of tires, and he had this desire to succeed in life. And he immigrated to this country. He worked very hard, and it's the American dream. He came here, and here I am now, an attorney, educated, a judge, running for a higher court. So every day that I wake up, I have these pictures in our restroom, as I get dressed, and I just always look at it, and, I want to make my dad proud that his sacrifices were not in vain, and that we're making a positive impact in our community, just like he did. Like I said, he died. He became a U.S. citizen because he loved this country so much, and he instilled in us, there's 6 of us, to get educated and just make the right decisions. Our last name is our reputation. That's our character. So I carry his last name, my last name, very proudly, and reputation is everything in life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's a really good reminder of just kind of like your roots and where you came from and where you're going. Mm-hmm. What about you, Luis?
I have this little token here, the camera. It's a very good friend of mine, Alex Davila. He was a major in the U.S. Air Force. Gave this to me shortly after my election in 2014.
And can you describe kind of what's on the both sides, and just kind of give a visual description if you can?
It's a blue and gold coin. It's got a clover in the front. It says Major U.S. Air Force, United States Air Force. In the back, it's got a bomber. It says United States Air Force. And the words that are engraved in this coin is really this is both a reminder to me about how I need to be, what I need to do, and what the responsibility has been instilled in me. The people of Hidalgo County have entrusted me with this huge responsibility, and it's a reminder of what that is. But at the same time, it speaks to the person that Alex is, because there's a backstory to Alex and I, the way we met, the way our friendship evolved. And I can tell you that Alex is, the man's got the biggest heart of anybody I've ever known. I could go on, I could talk about that for another hour. But Alex is just a great guy, and the fact that he even gave this to me in of itself is, I think from his point of view, was a sacrifice in of itself. Again, there's a whole backside story to this, but the words that are engraved in here says integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all that we do. And I know for those men and women that serve in the armed forces, these are words that they live and die by. I never served in the military. I do have friends and family who did serve, and thank you all for your service. But I think, again, these words are words that are instilled in them, and I know they carry themselves in such a fashion in everything that they do. And when he gave me this, it was just a small token. Just wanted me to have it just to kind of, he didn't tell me that this is just a reminder for you to, kind of remember these words you should live by. Mm-hmm. But I know without him having to tell me, that's what was the purpose of him giving me this to me.
Something that was very valuable to him and that he chose to give to us.
Right. Wow. And there's probably a list of 100 people that he could have given this to instead of me. but he chose to give it to me. So that in of itself means a lot to me. Perhaps Alex doesn't know this, but buddy, if you don't know, I'm telling you, I really appreciate that, your friendship, all the circumstances, surrounding our friendship and how it evolved to where, what it is today. But it is a reminder to me about what it is that we should, do every day, how we should comport ourselves every day, how we should treat people every day. And, for someone that's in public service, I mean, these are words that you should live by. And you should, and I'm truly honored that he gave me this, and I will cherish this forever. Maybe one day I'll pass it on to somebody that I care for dearly. But again, I brought this because of the meaning behind it, and then on so many levels, I'm just very grateful. And it's also coincides, or not coincides, but it was also given to me at the time when I won my election, and all the things that go into that, all the sacrifice, the time, energy, time away from your family, your friends, etc. So
it's a symbol of just kind of everything embodies everything that you've been doing.
That's exactly right. It's a symbol of all those things just coming together. So and a reminder of how we should conduct ourselves on a daily basis.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that, and so do you keep that in your pocket? Do you have it like stored away? And
there's a safe place at home where I keep it, where I have other things that I value dearly.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm not talking about diamonds or watches. That's not just things photos, etc. Things that
are kind of invaluable.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's great. So. As we kind of wrap up, there's a few questions, right? Because this podcast is life as we know it. So, current things that couple more questions before we kind of wrap up. Number one, is there like a quote, motto, or something that you all live by that, we talked about the golden rule, right? And that's kind of the way that you conduct yourself in the courtroom. But are there any other pieces of quotes, inspiration, thoughts like that you kind of carry through, and that maybe you instill in your children? Like, is there one thing or maybe several things?
I don't have a specific quote that I memorize, but I think one of the recurring things that keep on coming up in my life that I would pass on to someone else, or to my daughter, to my children, or if somebody asks me for advice, is don't ever let anybody tell you it's not your turn. Don't ever let anybody tell you, what you can accomplish. Nobody knows better than you what you're able to accomplish. So for me in life has just been a recurrent, theme of, growing up, working in the migrant in the fields, of somebody saying she can never become an attorney. She won't become an attorney. To going into, undergrad or high school when perhaps people didn't believe in me and said, no, perhaps you should just do this or stay home, or maybe you should do, just settle for something, and it was something that has affected me all the time, and I still keep on, even of today, when you're trying to do something, people would tell you it's not your turn. My advice or my words that I would give to someone growing up or trying to achieve their goal is don't ever let someone tell you it's not your turn. Have you not believe in yourself? You're the only one that knows what you're capable of. So I would just, tell people, keep on believing in yourself and don't let anybody else dictate your life or where you're going in life.
Right, yeah, because I think that the most influential voice that you can ever hear is your own, right? And so if you continue to kind of push yourself to do those things, and you stay in that you're not swayed by other people trying to tell you what you can and can't do, maybe because of their own personal experiences, right? So long as you have that kind of, you stay encouraged and you stay confident in yourself and your own, kind of, I guess, your dreams and your aspirations.
No one will know you better than you do. No one can measure the passion that you have, or the fire that you have in you to accomplish something. So there's nobody else out there better than you to know. So that's just my word of advice.
Awesome.
Of things that have driven me or that I've learned through my life.
Awesome.
And that I carry those same sentiments, but to build on that, I also am a strong and firm believer in that you have a responsibility to do the very best that you can, with everything that you have. Use all your resources, all your energy, do everything to climb up the ladder as high as you can, as far as you can. But wherever that takes you, don't ever forget that if you are in a position where you can help others, you also need to, reach down and try to bring people with you. I mean, there's no point in climbing that ladder to be there alone. You got to, continue to try to, bring people with you, do what you can to help others. And I think that's just a part of me that's like, I'm not selfish. I think I do gain a lot. I satisfaction from helping others. We talked about that a little earlier. And so I think it's not only your responsibility to do the best that you can with what you have, but when you reach a certain point, that you make sure that you help others achieve their dreams, their goals. And if you're in a position to help people, it's your obligation to do so.
To shield them, I agree. We must shield each other, bring each other up, and there's no better pride and joy than seeing others succeed as well. So
yeah, no, those are those are really great, great takeaways for people to kind of remember, because I think those are sort of the things that are ingrained as we kind of grow up, and sometimes it's very easy, especially in today's world, to lose sight of those things. And so, are there like any sort of principles, pieces of wisdom that you try to instill in your children, because your children are still very young. One of them is still in diapers, right? So he's not going to remember any. But what are some of those things that you want to try to carry through, like you were mentioning earlier, that taking on that those principles that you learned very early on, and then just kind of.
Well, I think from my standpoint, and one of the things that as they get a little bit older and they better understand life in general, is that we've done our family's sacrifice before we did. We made our own sacrifices to try to get to where we are, and try to, as every generation does, you want to provide for your families. You want your families, your kids, to have a better life than you did. I think it's going to be important for them to understand that regardless of what we accomplished or tried to accomplish, and hopefully we would have put them in a better place and a better situation than perhaps we were. They cannot take these things for granted. These things don't just happen. There are there's a lot of people out there that are not as fortunate. Perhaps they didn't have the same opportunities, or perhaps didn't take advantage of those opportunities. But whatever the situation is, they need to understand that, just because you perhaps live in a nice neighborhood, you have the ability to go to college, etc. Like, this isn't just the way it is for everybody. You have to understand that there's certain things that took place before your time that put you in this position, and you can't just take it for granted. Certainly you want to take advantage of the situation that you're in terms of trying to build on that, but don't think for 2 seconds that you're privileged, just because, your parents did this. Now you're going to have to make your own sacrifices. You have to make your own choices, decisions in life, and you want to build on what it is that you already have. The sky's the limit for everybody. None of us have reached the sky yet, but we can keep trying. And you should continue to try from wherever, whatever your starting point is. Everybody has a different starting point, but their starting point may be different than ours. But nonetheless, that you still need to work hard to, accomplish your goals, your dreams, and set the, I think we've set a decent bar for them, I would hope, to where they, they're gonna, I hope that they grow up to be kids who want to, this is what mom and dad did.
And they want to aspire to be more,
That's
just
right.
like you aspired to be more, and you aspired to be more.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and, so many doors have been opened for us too. So many generations, people before us have helped us open the door for us, especially for us women. Opening the door so that we're able to become accomplished, and that's something that we will pass on. That I hope to pass on to our children. Doors are opened. However, there's a lot of work to be done. So how is this going to be done? Following your passion. What is it that really motivates you? How are you going to go out there and be successful? You have to be happy. You have to have the drive. So they will have to find whatever their drive is. Perhaps law was my passion and our drive, but it might be different for them. And as long as they're able to keep the values that we instill in them as children about, following their passion, following their love, always giving back, I think that, they'll be able to move forward. And yeah, we have a lot of work to be done. So it's passing on the torch to them now.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate y'all's time. Thank you all for bringing such awesome just keepsakes for you all, and just kind of sharing all of it. It's been really great. That I've known you all for a few years now, and there's a lot of stuff that I didn't even know. I had no clue. So really appreciate y'all's insight, and hopefully we can do another one of these podcasts after the campaign is over, and we can talk about that experience
and how that went.
Yeah, and see how it goes. But the story continues, right?
Absolutely.
It sure does.
And thank you for having us. We really appreciate you having us.
Thank you for having us. We really enjoyed having this interview with you.
Yes. Well, thank you all. So I like to do just a cheers. So with your water, Miss Nereida.
My water.
Yes, and your water as well.
Cheers.
Cheers. Till the next one.
Yes, to the next one. Thanks.
That's life. That's life.